Freeze your enemies into juicy loot piles with the coolest mage spec around in just a few minutes with a quick talent build, a simple rotation and a solid understanding of what Frost Mage is all about. To get you started in 11.2, Frostfire will be the play in terms of your hero talents. For raiding, you can play this build. You will focus on prepping and casting big glacial spikes in between comet storms, the real cornerstone of Frostfire Mage, while keeping up with your procs. Dungeons and Delves use up similar builds, although Delves are a bit more flexible in terms of content and you can shift some points around to your liking. But the main gist is your frozen orb that will make blizzards instant, which in turn reduce the cooldown of your next frozen orb on top of big glacial spikes and comet storms. Both of these builds are linked in the description and you can copy and paste them inside your talent loadout in the game to start blasting right away. If you want to dive deeper into the spec, we also recommend checking the Icy Veins guide written by Kuni. We will go over the basics and how to play, while the written guide will go deeper into optimizing your Frost Mage gameplay. Frost Mage is actually really simple and the engine behind it is maybe the most accessible for new mages. And speaking of new mages, the class guides are back in our channel thanks to the support of our Patreons. Without them we couldn't actually make these twice a week, or at all. If you find these useful, consider checking our Patreon page at patreon.com/Marcelian&Flame. You don't have to become a member, but you can browse it since we have more goodies there to show our appreciation for all your guys' support. Cheers, everyone. Frost Mage has one big mechanic you need to understand, and that is Shatter. Shatter refers to when your spells get a crit multiplier as they hit a target that is frozen. A target that is frozen refers to an enemy inside one of your multiple Frost Nova effects or debuffed by Winter's Chill. When you hit an enemy in either of these situations, your spell is considered shattered and it gets a 1.5 multiplier on its critical chance and an additional 50% on top of it. Meaning that if you are just shy of 34% crit chance, making this super easy math that 100% we all know how to do in our heads, your spell has a 100% critical strike chance in total. When you put these on your big hitters like Comet Storm and Glacial Spike, you get insane burst. Since you cannot Frost Nova enemies all the time and bosses definitely cannot be frozen this way, you will want to apply Winter's Chill with Flurry and then fire a spell you want to shatter. There are two ways of doing this. The easy way is to just shoot out a Flurry and then cast two spells to have them shatter, since Winter's Chill applies with 2 stacks. You will definitely be using this method when Comet Storm is ready to cast, by the way. The hard way and better way is to cast a spell like Frost Bolt or Glacial Spike ideally, and as the cast is ending, you press your Flurry so that it shoots out at the same time as the hard casted spell, since Flurry is instant. If you have Comet Storm ready as well, you can then also press it so both of them can shatter. That's mainly it. You'll also actively build up icicles as you fire your frost bolts, which are tied to your mastery and how you actually end up casting Glacial Spike. Icicles are exactly what they sound, and you can see them above your character. Normally, when you hit your Ice Lance, they all shoot out at your target for extra damage. But with the talent builds we gave you, your icicles are no longer launched by your Ice Lance, and your Ice Lance and Flurry can sometimes even generate icicles as well. Instead, once you reach the max amount, which is 5, your Glacial Spike becomes castable, since thematically you merge your icicles into one big icicle or spike, whichever one you prefer. You have a few procs that you get along the way, like Fingers of Frost that make your Ice Lances shatter automatically regardless if your enemy has Winter's Chill or affected by Frost Nova. Another is Brain Freeze that resets the cooldown of Flurry and make it deal more damage. This way you ensure you shatter more and more spells. Last but not least, your main cooldown and only one is Icy Veins. This gives you 20% haste and summons a water elemental that buffs your frost damage as it shoots its own spells. It will also give you access to Freeze, a second Frost Nova you can use to shatter spells. As such, when you start combat with a boss, you precast your Frostfire Bolt into an immediate flurry like I mentioned. Activate Icy Veins and press Comet Storm. Shoot out your Frozen Orb, and then you just follow a simple priority of spells and use them if the conditions are correct. The priority of your spells always start with Icy Veins, since you want to make sure your main offensive ability doesn't sit around wasting potential damage. If your target doesn't have Winter's Chill on it, you want to cast Flurry to apply it, especially if your Comet Storm and Glacial Spike are ready to be casted, since you ideally want to have them shattered. Glacial Spike will be casted more, and sometimes you might not have a way to shatter it, during which time it's better to just send it than sit on it. Comet Storm, however, needs to always be shattered. If you are not sure you will have a Flurry for your target when Comet Storm is off cooldown and ready to launch, save one. Flurry has a 30-second cooldown, same as Comet Storm, but for Frostfire Mage, these will be reduced via different rotation conditions that just happen if you play normally. Checking them out and making sure they line up is very important. Next up, use your Frozen Orb if it is available. If all of these have been casted, pop your Shifting Power to reduce their cooldowns. Make sure that Icy Veins and Comet Storm have at least 12 seconds left, since that's how much cooldown this ability shaves off of your spells, so you can get maximum value. Also, never cast it during Icy Veins, since it barely does any damage, and you want that time to be spent on better spells. Use your Ice Lance if you have a Fingers of Frost proc, or if the target has Winter's Chill still on it, after you have used your Glacial Spikes and Comet Storms, of course. Lastly, fill in with Frostfire Bolts if nothing else more important is available. For AoE, the rotation is slightly different, but still incredibly simple. You open with your Icy Veins into a Blizzard, cast your Frozen Orb, and then Frostfire Bolt 4 times. Use Blizzard again, Comet Storm into quickly Cone of Cold, Frozen Orb again, Ice Lance, Blizzard again, and Comet Storm, and then use your Shifting Power. Let me explain. You first want to shoot out the 4 Frostfire Bolts 4 times so you can stack your Death's Chill to 12 stacks. This happens because your Frostfire Bolt hits 3 targets, so you get 3 stacks per cast, times 4 for a total of 12. Also, you have a talent called Coldest Snap, making Cone of Cold reset the cooldown of Comet Storm and Frozen Orb while also applying Winter's Chill if you hit 3 targets or more with it. This is why you don't launch Flurries or Frost Novas before hitting that Comet Storm. A simple priority to keep in mind is to always cast Icy Veins when it becomes available and then spam your Frostfire Bolts to get the buff stacked to 12. Make sure your Cone of Cold combo takes priority over everything else. That means using Frozen Orb to put it on cooldown and then Comet Storm into direct Cone of Cold into another orb and Comet Storm. Comet Storm comes with a short delay, giving you enough time to use Cone of Cold and apply Winter's Chill to the enemies, but you always want to make sure they are casted right after each other. Since you are playing Frostfire as your hero talent, you have 2 extra procs you want to keep in mind. One is Excess Fire, which activates when you use Comet Storm and makes your next Ice Lance hit like a truck and cause all sorts of other procs. You want to hit Ice Lance when you have 2 stacks of Excess Fire, so you don't end up generating more when your next Comet Storm becomes available, since you max out on 2. Once you make sure this is resolved, keep your Blizzard and regular Comet Storms on cooldown. Use your Glacial Spikes if you accumulate your 5 Icicles, ideally into a Flurry, especially if you have excess Frost, the second proc I told you about, which you get when you consume excess Fire. This one makes your next Flurry reduce the cooldown of Comet Storm. It may sound confusing, but you don't have to think too much about it, since playing normally will consume these automatically. I'm just telling you what's going on so you are aware of the importance of your spells and why your Comet Storm keeps coming off cooldown so fast, or rather, not fast enough if you're missing your spells. Use your Frostfire Bolt if it's shiny on your bars, meaning you get the Frostfire Empowerment buff. This makes it instant and deal way more damage, and another core aspect of your hero talents. It's good to cast it after you consumed your excess fire beforehand, ideally. Lastly, you will use your Ice Lances to consume whatever Fingers of Frost you have left or Winter's Chill on your targets. Fill in with Frostfire Bolt otherwise. The rotation requires a bit of practice, and I'm still working on getting it right. You can catch me trying it out on live stream at twitch.tv/Marcelian&Flame. We can even chat about Frost Mage and other worries you may have. Flame is not a doctor. For any health concerns of any kind, Marcelian&Flame recommend you see a licensed professional. Although I mentioned quite a bit about shattering spells, I didn't talk about Frost Nova a lot. You have a total of 2, 3 if you are in Icy Veins. Your regular Frost Nova, Ice Nova, and Freeze spells can be used to shatter your spells and mostly apply to AoE. The thing is, enemies that take damage while inside your Novas can break out of them and will happen a lot from the damage of your party members. They're not very reliable, so you only get one quick chance to make them count. An example would be for you to cast your Glacial Spike into an immediate Frost Nova effect if you're close enough to your targets. This is better than Flurry since your talents make it hit 2 targets and Flurry applies Winter Chill only to 1. You can do this the same with Ice Nova and Freeze, by the way. And speaking of this, you are a Frost Mage, meaning you slow things all the time. Most people are aware of this, but you need to understand that there could be situations when this is a bad thing. An example would be the Priory of the Sacred Flame dungeon when you pull packs with light spawns. When these guys die, they explode and heal other enemies inside their area of effect. Tanks usually move these enemies out, but if they are slowed, you get the picture. Outside of that, your mage kit will take a bit of practice to get used to, but once you do, you will quickly find out that you are one of the tankiest classes in the game. Alter Time can reset your HP pool, negating a lot of the damage you take. We talked more in depth about it in our Arcane Mage guide, by the way. Ice Cold makes you insanely resistant and heal you for 50% of your HP. Greater Invisibility makes you invisible, dropping potential mechanics off of you like the Imprison in Tazavesh Streets from the first boss if you cast it before it hits. And when the stealth is broken, you gain 60% damage reduction for 3 seconds. Time this right and you are again incredibly resistant. Not to mention you have fat absorb shields for yourself with Ice Barrier and your party members with Mass Barrier. Mirror images are also valuable when you get situations where big single hits happen multiple times. One last thing I wanted to mention is about 2 talents. Ice Flows is recommended for Frost Mages instead of Shimmer. This can be tricky if you are used to playing Shimmer since the functionality of these 2 mechanics is very different. Actually pick whichever one you like more to play and don't stress too much about it. Obviously the benefit of Ice Flows is you can cast your Glacial Spike and Shifting Power on the move, but Shimmer accomplishes a similar goal with a second charge of Blink on top of it all. Dragon's Breath is the same. I got used to playing Supernova, which allows me to stay afar and safe, but sometimes you want Dragon's Roar instead, for which you have to be close to melee. This is usually fine in AoE since Cone of Cold is also almost melee range. Something to keep in mind. The stats you want to go for are Intellect first and foremost. This means eye level on any piece with Intellect on it. Otherwise aim for Haste. Critical Strike is next, but only until 33.34% or 34% to keep it simple, since that's the breakpoint when you get 100% crit chance for your shattered spells, making any more crit lose value very fast. Lastly, Mastery and Verse if you still need to make a choice, and just to paint a picture, Critical Strike again as the last stat if you already are at 34%. Of course, this is just a list to keep in mind. If you really want to make sure you get the absolute most out of your gear, you will need to sim on raidbots.com. Although not super important to keep in mind, your tier set is very strong and changes based on your hero talents. Your Frostfire 2-set bonus makes your Meteor from your Comet Storm, Frostfire Burst proc, and Frostfire Bolt apply an Ignite dot on your target. The theme is Fire and Frost Mages combine their powers to make a sweaty love child with a lot of procs for both elements, so the tier set wants to make all of these fun by giving you some peculiar tooltips. All you need to know is your stuff deals more damage. Your 4-piece makes your Glacial Spike also launch a Pyroblast that also applies the Ignite debuff. Still passive, but signifies why it's important to use Glacial Spike even in situations where you cannot shatter it reliably. We did our best to keep this as simple as possible, and as such, know that there is more to learn about Frost if you decide to push harder and game content. We recommend reading Kuni's Icy Veins guide for more details and even checking the Alter Time Mage Discord, all linked in the description. And for even more mage goodness, we already have an Arcane guide up that simplifies the spec for your understanding in case you wanted to extend your mage repertoire to play a bit more of a meta spec on the side.